last night, it was what looked like it was a horrific one. And if you watch that Clippers game, they lost by a point. The Paul George injury, I don't know how to explain it, but his knee kind of like hyperextended, and it really looked gruesome. Looked like it was the type of thing that might keep him out for the rest of the season. Now, thankfully, this is somewhat good news. He'll be out for, looks like, the rest of the regular season, and then be reevaluated, I guess, about 3 weeks from now to see if there's any chance he can play in the postseason. It was a sprained knee. And, Rob, it looked like I thought it was bad, but I was holding out hope because you remember in 2021 when Giannis hurt his knee against Atlanta.
Yes.
And it looked exactly like that. He hyperextended it, and Giannis only missed 2 games and came back and was able to play in the finals, and obviously was phenomenal.
And it was unbelievable to come back.
Yep.
You remember, everybody thought that Milwaukee was sunk, and he came back and played. And I think, Chris, am I wrong? Did they win all 4 of those games when he came back?
No, he played all 6 games.
Okay, so he missed the 2.
He missed 2 against Atlanta.
Okay,
and
yeah,
then
I remember.
Came back.
And then came
finals.
back,
they
and
were
they
down
lost the first 2 games,
yep.
right? And then they won the next 4. But yeah, he bounced back and was tremendous. And it looked like they were all done after he got hurt, and it didn't happen. But the Paul George thing, I've never seen anything like it. Like a franchise that has done all the right things, and they just can't catch a break. It's snake bit, whatever you want to call it, jinxed, cursed, Chris, whatever it is. It's if I'm ownership and management, I'm just like, you throw your hands up and you say, what do we do? Why? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you mentioned making all the right moves, and obviously they've made some mistakes, but let's kind of go through it, Rob. They had a big 3 of Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, when Blake Griffin was one of the best small forwards in the league, and DeAndre Jordan when he was a multiple-time All-Star, and we all know what Chris Paul is, and never could get past the second round, Rob. Then they bring in Doc Rivers, who is officially a top 15 coach. Obviously, his shine has been sullied a bit over the last few years, mainly because of what he did with the Clippers. But he, at the time, Rob, I thought they were going to win the championship with Doc Rivers and that trio. And they had some Matt Barnes and, J.J. Redick. And they had a nice cast of role players around those 3. And, Rob, they never got past the second round.
Right.
The second round. And then now you got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And, again, a nice group of players around them. And this year, last year, the last several years. And they got to the conference finals once. Was it last year, 2 years ago? For the first time ever. But, Rob, now you got the injuries. And I'm sorry, Kawhi's playing phenomenal. He's averaging 27 points a game in this calendar year since January. But they can't win the championship. And I don't even think they can win the West without Kawhi or Paul George. And so that's what you're alluding to with the snake bitten.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to you remember, because everybody thought that Kawhi Leonard was going to the Lakers, Chris. You remember that the Clippers were out of the Kawhi Leonard sweepstakes?
The Clippers thought he was gone.
Right.
They thought he was going there.
And he did not. He came to the Clippers with the ultimate. He had easy street.
Well, with the ultimatum. But it was get Paul George.
But still, it was easy. He had easy street. He didn't even have to do that. Easy street is go join LeBron and AD. That's easy street.
Right.
Would you admit that? Right. That's easy street.
But I get why he didn't. You know what I mean?
No, I'm just saying. Right. But that he could have picked easy street, and won 3 or 4 championships and not be counted on to be the main guy and all the and rest and play with all that.
A lot of guys ain't gonna want that if they're as good as he was. Yeah.
Right, and that's not what he picked. And they've made some trades. They got Ty Lue, who is a fabulous coach. I really believe that. Remember when Kawhi got hurt in that Jazz series, Chris? They still won without Kawhi, got to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history. But every time you turn around, there's some injury or something happens. And it's mind-boggling to me. If you're a Clipper fan, I know that they don't rate as far as NBA fans, or especially in this town, which is a Laker town. But I would just be scratching my head. Why can't our guys just stay healthy for one postseason run, Chris, and then see what happens? If you don't win, you don't win.
Right. Because to your point, one of the reasons, it wasn't, I guess, maybe the main reason, but those years with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, there was always an injury, right? Somewhere somebody was hurt. And so that was a big part of their problem as well. But look, they have lost two. Remember, Kawhi and Paul George blew it in the bubble. So it's not like they've just, some of it's on them as well. But, Rob, in hindsight, a lot of people are talking about how, man, they should have just kept Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because he's turned into a star and headed toward being a superstar, perhaps. And they got Paul George, who's been banged up and certainly is banged up now. Rob, the reason they did that, because they really liked Shai, but Kawhi gave him an ultimatum. I'm not coming unless you go get Paul George. So this was a player orchestrated move. He called Paul. They start talking about it. And this is the second one. Now, and to be honest, both of them have kind of been doomed by injuries. Rob, the same thing in Brooklyn. It was player orchestrated, players building a team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and then adding James Harden on their own. And they never materialized into what they should have been because of injuries too, and a few other things too. But do you think this says anything about the player as GM? No. Like LeBron's had success with it, but these last two iterations have not.
Yeah, I don't. I just think it's both with the injuries in Brooklyn and then the COVID, just a lot of stuff. Durant stepping on the line in a big game in Game 7. Like a lot of things could have been changed and people wouldn't be saying that. But I get it. It didn't happen. He stepped on the line. He didn't hit a three.
I'm not giving it.
He hit a 2. I'm just saying. Yeah. But no. If you're a ownership or a GM and two players of those ilks, Chris, come to you and say, we want to play here and get this team together or whatever, you're signing up for that. It's nice to try to be organic and put together your own team. That sounds good. No one's waiting on a 5-year plan. If you're a GM and there's two proven stars and want to play for your team, and you could do it legally, you have money under the cap, and you can sign them as free agents, you're going to make that effort and that attempt every single time. And I don't think it's going to sour people. I don't know how many guys now. I think there's a different group of players, Chris, who maybe aren't into the LeBron way of thinking or what he kind of started as far as player-driven. Because we've seen that Damian Lillard and some other players who Zion could have forced his way out of New Orleans. He didn't do it. He signed a contract, right? Remember they were saying.
Well, but very few players. I don't know if any have. There might be one that turned down that first contract.
Yeah, but I'm just
and
saying.
LeBron took a contract that first year. You know what I mean? Like,
but I mean, if he really wanted to force his way out, you can do it nowadays because.
But the pressure's not on the young kids.
No. I'm just saying
to win.
I'm not sure that people are following that LeBron game plan.
I agree with you
as we go further. I just don't feel the same way as when LeBron first did it, and then even when the Warriors went out. And they played GM as well and recruited Kevin Durant. So it worked out for them. They got 2 championships more, so it worked in that situation. And then what happened? Durant got hurt.
Yeah, I agree that any GM would have done what Brooklyn did if Kyrie and Durant say they want to go there, you're taking them. Any GM I feel would have done what the Clippers did. Okay, we really like Shea, but heck, we can get Kawhi, and Paul George is a great player too. Sure, sign me up. So I'm with you on that, but it hasn't worked in a while. Obviously, as you said, Durant, it worked for him. And LeBron, it worked. I don't know that because LeBron was such a great GM, because remember when he went to Cleveland, Rob, he wanted them to trade, which they did, Kevin Love or Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love.
Right. If you remember, Chris, when he put out his letter when he was coming back to Cleveland, he mentioned a lot of players. He didn't mention Wiggins, who was the first overall pick. Right. I mean, that was as obvious as it gets that he wasn't going to be around. He wasn't even mentioned.
And Wiggins, even at that young age, I mean, he was obviously a much better defender than Kevin Love. And Kevin Love, God bless him, he got a championship with LeBron. But he really, you look at his numbers, his production in
when
those
he was
playoffs,
in Minnesota, Chris, he was just double.
He was a monster. I mean, he was Moses Malone type numbers. But Wiggins came in right away and became a big scorer, averaged 17 as a rookie, 21 his second year. And the Cavs, I think, Rob, would have been better with Wiggins instead of Love. LeBron was able to make it work outside of Miami and Cleveland at time because he was just so good. But it wasn't. So you talk about it a lot. It's hard for players to be a GM. They're not out there grinding all the time and looking at who's
Chris,
this
that's
and
why
who's
when
that.
I hear that even in the NFL and they want to be in on decision
Especially
making,
the NFL.
I'm like, stop it. You're not watching college football and film and and all that other stuff to sit there and sit at a table and decide who's going to be drafted. It's a crapshoot for even people, Chris, who do it for a living.
NFL draft. Absolutely.
Right? Who do it for a living. It's a crapshoot. There's going to be people
making mistakes this year. No doubt. At the top look at the Jets. Zach Wilson, the number 2 pick. Sam Darnold. The number 3 pick. Yeah.
They got a staff of 50 people, Chris, doing research, stats, analytics, right? Consultants, everything. And they can't get it right.